Welcome, everybody, to the Straight No Chaser podcast, where we talk about human flourishing through money, technology, economics, and philosophy. Today, we have an amazing chat with Hermann Vivier, the man behind Bitcoin Ekasi. Hermann's story is really incredible. It's the story of a guy that starts off helping other people, and along the way, he discovers Bitcoin and how Bitcoin makes sure that his regular business succeeds where many of his competitors failed. And he goes on to absolutely build a legacy in his local community, incorporating both his business and Bitcoin. It's such a brilliant story, and it is a reminder and a welcome reminder to people that are interested in Bitcoin that Bitcoin is not just a savings technology. It is really money, everyday cash that can be used to pay people and to buy goods and services for yourself. And Hermann has done it in really the most unlikely way, in frankly an informal township settlement on the southern tip of Africa. He is showing how Bitcoin is changing lives. You guys will love this one.
Awesome. Right, Hermann, good morning. Welcome to the show. It's nice to have you here. I can see from the hoodie that you're wearing that it is cooler where you are than where I am. Just for the record, I'm in from the US, so it's Northern Hemisphere. It's high summer here. You, I guess, are in your hometown. Is that correct?
Yeah, how's it, man? I'm in Mossel Bay, which is about as far south as you can go on the African continent. It's not quite at the southern tip, but for practical purposes, it's pretty much there. It's getting cooler. It's not summer anymore. It's definitely getting into winter. But I mean, we're super spoiled with winter, dude. It's a fantastic season actually. So no complaints.
Yeah, the South African winter is amazing. I'm actually from Pretoria is actually my hometown, and I think Pretoria is consistently voted as the city with the best weather in the world. So no matter where you go outside of Pretoria, it's never great. But I think Mossel Bay's got the sea, so probably one up on Pretoria.
Yeah, it's an awesome place. I love living here.
Cool. Awesome. Well, it's welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Right. So, Hermann, you're famous for the Bitcoin Ekasi project. Famous or infamous? I think I'll go with famous. But I did notice, well, I do know that the Surfer Kids was kind of the precursor to what Bitcoin Ekasi is today. And I wanted to just ask you a bit about that. But maybe before we chat about Surfer Kids, just tell me a bit about your background for those who may not, they may have heard of Bitcoin Ekasi, they may have heard of you, but what is your background? How did you end up in Mossel Bay with Surfer Kids and ultimately Bitcoin Ekasi?
I think it's great to start with the Surfer Kids because I don't actually like the amount of attention that's sometimes thrown onto Bitcoin Ekasi, and it's not that I don't like the attention thrown onto the project. I like the attention; it's great, but the appearance that Bitcoin Ekasi popped out of the ground like a mushroom and that we achieved the success that we did overnight or within 3 years or 4 years or whatever the case may be, it's entirely incorrect. It's built on the Surf Kids, which has been in existence for more than a decade prior to the beginning of Bitcoin Ekasi. So the day I started Bitcoin Ekasi, I'd effectively already been doing this, which is community-based work, for the last 10 years. So it was not overnight success, not at all. The Bitcoin addition to the project was a relatively small addition to what we already had in place before that. My personal background, I grew up in Cape Town, which is obviously I would say the best city in South Africa, but you may disagree coming from Pretoria.
Hey, I said Pretoria had the best weather in the country. I didn't say it was the best city in the country.
Yeah, I mean, look, Cape Town is an incredible place. I grew up there on the west coast of Cape Town. And it used to be a little small fishing village when I grew up there, but it's now been the village where I grew up has now been absorbed into the city. Cape Town has grown exponentially over the years, with all the semigration from the rest of the country to that city. Been going on for more than a decade. So, but yeah, grew up there, moved to this part of the country because I just got tired of living in a city. There's a lot of people, a lot of cars, a lot of traffic, and as great as that is for culture and stuff, I just wanted a slightly more quiet life. So moved out here to Mossel Bay. Moved here with my wife. We started a business here based in tourism, and started the Surfer Kids at the same time. And that all sort of started off in 2010 as the year of the World Cup. Everybody went to Cape Town for the World Cup. I left Cape Town because of the World Cup, the football World Cup. I just finished a degree at university then, studying philosophy and literature. And so not from a financial or a technology background at all. And yeah, the business sort of got me into Bitcoin, actually, the tourism business, because it was the tourism business that forced us to look for alternative payment systems when our clients could no longer pay us. This was in 2014, 2015, when the Russian-Ukrainian conflict first broke out. And so we actually had Ukrainian clients then who banked in Russia and wanted to pay for a surf trip, which is the business that we started. It's a surf tour operator. And they couldn't pay us. They were stuck behind sanctions. And I'd been reading about Bitcoin for about 2 years by that stage. I got into it in 2013 thanks to Bitcoin Magazine. And I suggested that they pay us in Bitcoin. And so it started off that way. Yeah, that's kind of how I ended up where I am today. The long and the short of it.
Okay, awesome. So, were you a surfer yourself? You've got this tourism.
I tried to be.
So you've got this surfing tour business that you started, and then at the same time you decided to start Surfer Kids. I mean, that's a big ask. Most people focus on getting business one off the ground, settled, before they start looking at side projects or something more on the philanthropy side of things. I always struggle with that word. So tell me about Surfer Kids. What was that attraction to you?
Look, I grew up surfing. So the little village, which is now part of Cape Town, where I grew up, we lived a stone's throw from the beach. So I grew up surfing. I've been surfing my whole life. And when we started the business, there were a couple of things we were thinking. We were thinking, well, how can we make this business unique? And how can we give people who travel to South Africa a real South African experience? Because it's super easy to come to South Africa, especially this part of the country, especially Cape Town and the Western Cape, and feel like you're in Europe. And so the idea with the Surfer Kids was, well, if we started this non-profit, and look, we wanted to give people an authentic South African experience, but we didn't want to go down the township tourism kind of thing where people get on a bus and drive through a poor area to go and look at people like they're driving through a zoo. It's ridiculous. So the idea with the Surfer Kids was, look, if we have this nonprofit that's operating, and we can give tourists an experience where they interact with this nonprofit, which we can only really do if we're the people running the nonprofit. It's quite, that people running nonprofits can be quite territorial. So you can't just go into any NPO and say, look, I've got a bunch of tourists. Can they hang out with your people or whatever? So we kind of knew we had to start our own NPO in order to do that. But it would benefit the business by giving our clients an experience they can't get anywhere else. And it kind of worked. I mean, it didn't work as expected, but it kind of worked. So the Surfer Kids kind of started growing on its own, and it was a very small operation for a very long time. And I mean, it's still relatively small, but by the time COVID nearly destroyed it, we only really had two full-time staff members. And I mean, COVID nearly killed the Surfer Kids because we were entirely reliant on funding that came through the tourism industry. And so when COVID lockdowns came, our business got basically mothballed. So we basically packed up the business and put it in storage for 2 years. Fortunately, we didn't have any debt in the business. Unfortunately, we had been into Bitcoin for more than 5 years by then. So and we obviously had Bitcoin on the business balance sheet. People were paying us for surf trips in Bitcoin. So we could survive. The business could survive, and when the tourism industry opened up again, we just kind of picked up where we left off. Unlike many other tour operators, we have people working for us today who themselves owned operations that were bigger than ours before COVID. So Bitcoin saved our business in more ways than one. But the Surfer Kids was always this kind of like side project to the business, with the idea being that we can give tourists a great experience, because they people know when something's authentic, and I think a lot of tourists, my suspicion is that most tourists want to have authentic experiences. Like nobody wants to be treated like a tourist, although they are all tourists, but nobody wants to get sold and ripped off as a real, like most tourists do. People travel to a country to have an authentic experience, and what more authentic experience can you have other than interacting with the kind of people that you would otherwise never encounter in your regular tourist itinerary. So the nonprofit kind of gave us that. We could combine surf lessons between the kids in the NPO and the tourists, and they would get to surf with people that they otherwise never would have been able to meet. So it was great, and that's kind of what the Surfer Kids, where it came from, and that's kind of where it was at in 2020 when the lockdowns hit, and then that's kind of when everything kind of changed. But that's the background of the Surfer Kids, really.
So just probably a final question on the Surfer Kids. When you left Cape Town, arrived in Mossel Bay, was there a community of kids from that area that were surfing that you sort of looked at and thought we could help them, or was this something that you actually introduced into the area?
No, we introduced it. There was nothing there. There was an effort prior to us by somebody who is sort of my dad's age, so previous generation, who had a similar program for township kids running in the early 2000s, sort of late 90s, early 2000s. And one of the coaches who work for us today actually learned to surf in that particular program, but that program was dead by the time we got here, and it had been dead for several years. And we also did not start in the same community right away. We started in another one. So for the most part, I'd say, for the most part, we had to introduce surfing, but we did pick up some of the pieces that were left before by the operation that preceded us. Although, like I said, by the time we started, there was hardly any leftovers from before. We found one person, maybe two people who still had an interest in surfing from that previous program, who ended up working for us as coaches. But the one guy didn't stay long. So there's the one person. So yeah, for the most part, we introduced it, and we also, like I said, shifted to a different community. We identified a place where we could implement this program without the kids needing to be transported. So the part of the township where we operate is very, very close to the beach. The kids walk up and down 5 days a week, and the previous surfing program did not operate in that particular area. So in this particular area, we introduced. I mean, as you know, the townships in South Africa are quite sprawling. You know, they can be very, very large. Like in Mossel Bay, you know, it's a town of 150,000 people, and at least half of the people live in the township. So, you know, only less than 50%, maybe even less than that, is sort of like normal suburbs. The other half is typical South African township. So it's a sprawling township, and I'm not sure why the previous program didn't operate where we ended up going. I think maybe because they looked for the sort of the more, how can you put it, the more well-established part of the township where things aren't quite as rough. Where we operate, it's not only the closest part of the township to the beach, it's also the poorest part of the township. So there's, you know, the highest concentration of shacks, the most poverty, and like I said, you know, the proximity to the beach. But that's really what the thing that ensured the long-term success of the Surfing Kids, why we were able to operate for 10 years and why we survived, is because of that proximity to the beach. So we never had to rely on transport, and that's super expensive. You know, that's normally what brings a small startup surfing organization down, is the reliance on transport. We could, as long as we could afford the salary of one coach, you know, some months we operated on almost nothing. All we needed to do was make sure we can pay the salary of one coach, and the kid can come and surf, you know. Because there were many years where we operated on fumes, man. Yeah.
So, I mean, I know I said that's the last question I'm going to ask about Surfer Kids, but I'm changed my mind. I mean, this is like an amazing story. So another thing that, I mean, so you took something that wasn't there, surfing, and you introduced it into this really, as you say, a poor community. What has been, how have people responded to that? What is the impact on the kids? Is there something beyond surfing that you hope to leave with the kids, or what has surfing meant in that community?
I mean, I think, you know, this idea in Bitcoin of proof of work, where you can't fake a valid hash. You know, it's this, you know, fantastic idea that that sort of, you know, ties the money to the real world. That concept, to me, I mean, I understood that concept before I came across Bitcoin. I think my experience with that concept came thanks to recovery from drug addiction, where, you know, you can't fake because I'm a recovering addict, and if you encounter somebody who has a real problem with addiction, the one thing that you can be absolutely certain of is that they're going to find a way to get high. They will steal, they will lie, they will steal their parents' cutlery to sell for drugs. That's what addicts do, you know. And in order to recover from that, in order to find recovery from drug addiction, there's something that you need to unlock. I'm not going to go into the details of that, but, well, I mean, I can, I don't mind. But the point is that thing that you unlock that enables you to stop using and live a normal, healthy life where you are sober and doing things that normal people do. There's no way to fake that. There's just no way to fake it. You either have it or you don't. And there's not many things like that in life. You know, there's a lot of areas in life where you can kind of pretend to have something even though you don't really have it. You know, you can lie on your CV, you can pretend to have the skills that you have, maybe get away with it for a while, do a job that you shouldn't really be doing. blah blah blah. There's a lot of areas in life where you can do that, but there's two areas in life that I know of where you can't do that, and that's in the recovery from drug addiction and in Bitcoin. You just can't fake that. So this idea of proof of work made sense to me, and I could see how surfing could be a vehicle for that, because sport is also very similar. It's very hard to fake your ability in sport. You put someone on a sporting field, you make them run around a track, you give them a ball and say, you can't fake that. It's just that you either have it or you don't. And so with surfing, the idea was to say, look, if you want to live a successful life, there's one way to do it, and that is to commit to changing your life, not asking someone else to do it. You must change your life. You must learn how to do difficult things. You must commit to long-term goals, and surfing is just a vehicle to do that. Like, if I had grown up playing some other sport, it would probably have been that sport, but surfing is the thing that I grew up with, and so we kind of used surfing as a vehicle to convey that to the kids. Like, we'll help you, we'll train you, you can go places, you can do things, but you have to commit to learning this thing. And there's no way that you can fake it. You're either going to show us that you can learn it or you're not. But you can't say I can do it and then paddle out into the ocean and you almost drown. It's like, okay, well, you obviously didn't learn to do it. So the idea was to teach this, commitment to long-term commitment to long-term goals, and that's really what determines that's really the difference between a successful person and someone who's not successful. Like, successful people make goals and they do whatever it takes to get there, despite challenges or hardships. And this idea is very much embedded in the Bitcoin ethos as well. But yeah, we used surfing as a vehicle to teach that. This is kind of what the idea was. The idea was not really to teach the kids surfing. The idea was to teach them the value of that principle. Commit to something, make it happen, and you will one day have a better life. Or sit in your ass, complain about it for the rest of your life, and nothing's going to change. It's up to you.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've heard the same thing, going to university described in the same way. It actually, all it proves is that you can commit to a 3-year or a 4-year program and you can get through and get it done. It's almost what you study is almost irrelevant, obviously, unless you want to be a doctor or a brain surgeon or something where it's very specific. But I've heard that. So that is amazing. And what has been the highlight of the Surfer Kids program for you? In terms of the kids, has there been sort of a standout moment or someone that has just really taken off, or maybe there's more than one person that's done it, but I mean, what would a big highlight be for you on that?
The highlight was, I guess, surviving to the point where we could use the Surfer Kids to start Bitcoin Ekasi. The highlight for me, there were other highlights. I'm not going to like, there has been, this past earlier this year in March, we had a little 12-year-old kid that won the provincial championships. And I mean, it's like a little provincial competition, but there's a whole bunch of kids that enter from different parts of the province. And there's a lot of kids who come from much better circumstances, but yeah, this little boy won his under 12 division, and he was just so stoked. Obviously, and it was super cool to see. And there's been many moments like that across the year, but really the highlight for me was to, I guess personally, to have learned the lessons. Like, it was a very valuable learning curve for me. I mean, I didn't really know what I was busy with while I was running the Surfer Kids, but as it turns out, what I was doing while running the Surfer Kids was learning the things that I needed to learn in order to be able to run the thing that came after it successfully, which is the Bitcoin Ekasi project, which has drawn a lot more attention, and which has grown much bigger than the Surfer Kids ever was on its own. but would never have been able to exist without the surfer kids. Like, the thinking of making things work when there's no budget to work with at all. The tenacity to rather don't spend money if it's not necessary. Like, if you can make it work in a cheaper way, then you do that. Like, you don't, just because you have the funding, don't go out there and use it. Like, that sort of mentality is really, really hard to cultivate if you get a big donation or whatever. And the guy, I learned those things the hard way. So yeah, that was really the highlight for me, because it has been a very exciting 4 years with the Ekasi project. But I hate to think what it would have been like doing this without that background, running the Surfer Kids prior to this. Maybe other people can do that, but I don't think I would have been able to.
So that is amazing. I've just popped onto the screen Bitcoin Ekasi. Now, that is an amazing picture. Everything that you've spoken about now, talking about, grassroots, one coach, months going by with running on fumes, and now this picture pops up. Tell me a bit about this picture.
That thing doesn't run on fumes, Drew.
No, it turns petrol into fumes.
Yeah, and it turns a lot of petrol into fumes.
Tell me about that picture. What's happening there?
It's a 1994 80 series Land Cruiser. We bought it. It had 500,000 kilometers on the odometer. So typical Land Cruiser, still sells for a decent amount after having done 500,000 kilometers and after 2 decades. Like, it's but anyway, the idea with that was really just to make a statement and draw attention, to start a conversation. That car is basically a conversation starter. We've been using it for the past 3 years to take kids to surfing competitions. One of our coaches does triathlon. He's the guy standing up at the back there. His name is Akona. He'll go and do triathlon events. He'll go do swimming, running, cycling events. We've taken the kids to skateboarding events with this car, and wherever you go, people ask questions, and that's really why we built this thing. I say we built it because we literally spent almost as much money on making it look the way it does as we did on buying the original car. So we bought the vehicle for X amount, and then we spent the same amount on the trimmings and everything to make it look as cool and as much Bitcoin like as possible. But yeah, so the dude on the right hand side, that's Lutando. He's sitting there next to the horns. He was the only coach that was left at the Surfer Kids after COVID lockdowns, after we opened up again after the COVID lockdown. So we had other coaches that worked for the Surfer Kids going into COVID, but because we had to operate on literally on fumes by the end of the 2-year lockdown period. He was the only person left. So it's basically him and me that started the Ekasi project. We sort of, I remember the day sitting there with him saying, like, look, man, this thing is going to die, or we can try and do something else with this. So let's take the Surfer Kids and we turn the Surfer Kids into this other project. And the Surfer Kids will still exist. And in fact, it will probably benefit a lot from this, but it's going to become something else. It'll still do what it does, but it'll do way more than what it was doing. The lady in the middle there is a former primary school teacher. She teaches the Bitcoin diploma. So we've got classes 5 days a week, teaching kids from the same neighborhood where we get the kids from to join the Surfer Kids. So we recruit from the same neighborhood both for the Surfer Kids and for the Bitcoin diploma classes. We just recruit the children a little older for the Bitcoin diploma classes. With the surfer kids, we start from 6-7 years old. They start coming to surf, and with the Bitcoin diploma, we start from around 12-13 years old.
Well, I mean, that's incredible. That's amazing. So let's. I mean, that's a great way to start talking about Bitcoin Ekasi. But what I'm curious is to find out from you is, what was the aha moment for you, looking at, hey, I've got the Surfer Kids thing going, I've got this Bitcoin thing, and I've had some clients actually pay me in this to, how does that tie together where you go, hey, this is something that we can actually bring together?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say there was probably 3 different aha moments. The first 2 were personal, and then the third one was the sort of Bitcoin Ekasi aha moment. The first 2 aha moments was when I was peripherally aware of the banking crisis in Cyprus in 2013. I seem to it came as a result of our involvement in the tourism industry, that we heard these stories of people, because I mean there were a lot of Russians who banked in Cyprus, and we heard these stories of people who had deposits in some of these banks that went bankrupt. I believe it was the 3 biggest banks in the country that went bankrupt. I mean, this is a European country. This is not some banana republic. This is a European country. 3 largest banks in the country go under, and people had deposits forcibly confiscated in exchange for shares in these banks, which at that time were bankrupt companies. So that's ridiculous. Like, you're being forced to buy shares in a bankrupt company so as to bail out the company. Like, it's and I saw this and I was like, I mean, I'd been aware of the shenanigans in the financial world for a while. Like 2008 was my awakening moment. When I just hearing the numbers being thrown around, $700 billion to bail out a system that basically fucked itself. But when I heard that, I was like, shit, this is really unfair. And then the thing that really did it for me was, at the same time that I was reading up about the stuff in Cyprus, a friend of mine gave me a copy of Bitcoin magazine. This was halfway through 2013. I still remember the cover of that magazine, and I read this and I was like, if these people had their money in Bitcoin, this wouldn't have been possible. Like, if I understand this thing correctly, then this is like pretty much revolutionary, right? Because there's just no way that somebody could confiscate your Bitcoin if this is how it works. And so that was all theoretical. I didn't really know how it worked because I was just reading stuff in a magazine. So that was the first aha moment. And then the second aha moment was when I sat behind my computer in 2015 and I saw that first payment come in from the Ukrainian dudes that paid us for that surf trip in March 2015. I saw that first payment come through and I was like, I remember thinking, holy shit, the banks are never going to survive this. Like, there's just no competition here. Like, I just received money from a person, like, we had tried every other way, like nothing else. There was no way they could send it through the banking system. We couldn't use something like PayPal. None of that was available. Like, we even resorted at some point to try and make a deal using credits on some gambling platform. Like, this guy was going to pay me in gambling credits and I could then cash it out this side. And at that point I told him, no, wait, hang on. I know that you don't know about this Bitcoin thing because no one knows about it. This is 2015. But go and read up about this thing, and then I'm pretty sure that you can pay me in this. I'm sure you can find someone that side where you can buy some Bitcoin and you can send it to me. And the transaction came through 10 minutes later. It had its first confirmation. And I was just sitting there thinking, like, this is incredible. Like, this is literally halfway around the world, skipping all imaginary borders. bypassing financial sanctions. Nobody knew about it. Like, there was no declaration, there was no paperwork, it's just like, here's some cash, I'm going to email it to you. Like, that was a huge aha moment. And then, fast forward another 5 years, 2020, at the end of 2019, I started following the Bitcoin Beach story. And the moment I heard that first interview with Mike Peterson, I was like, oh, wow, I think I could do that, because I basically have the same setup. Like, I have a background in Bitcoin. By that time, it had been what, six years I'd been obsessed with this thing. I had the background, I had the experience. We've been using it. It wasn't just theoretical. We were actually using it for payments and stuff. So I had the experience, and I had this nonprofit that was the perfect platform to utilize for something like a Bitcoin Beach project, where you pay people salaries in Bitcoin, and it has these positive knock-on effects, where you're motivating people to start thinking about the future, start thinking about saving, and basically uplift themselves. Because that, at the end of the day, is what we were trying to do with the Surfer Kids. But it's really, really hard to do that. It's very like that old saying of, give a man a fish, feed him for a day, teach him how to fish, feed him for a lifetime. That is really fucking difficult to do. It is very, very, very difficult. If you want to use that analogy, it's very difficult to teach someone how to fish. It's very difficult. It's a very big challenge. It's really easy to feed someone with a fish. Teaching them how to fish is incredibly difficult. And in my experience, I didn't really find a way to do that. But once we introduced Bitcoin, we did find the way to do that. You basically pay someone's salary in an asset that appreciates over time. And that's how you get them to think about the future. That's how you get them to plan for their own future. And when I heard Mike Peterson talk, it was funny because the guy interviewing him was Peter McCormack. It was the What Bitcoin Did podcast. And Peter McCormack was like, he was skeptical. Like, he was like, nah, dude, this can't work. And I was sitting there going, no, this really can work. Like, I know this can work. And I'm going to try it. I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to do what they're doing there. That was the third aha moment. That was late 2019 through early 2020, because I heard the podcast interview in late 2019, and then I sat with the idea in my head. And then when the lockdowns came, I was like, okay, shit. Now I kind of have to do something different, because the Surfer Kids is going to die. So it wasn't like an aha moment in one single moment. It was this stage of like maybe 6 to 9 months, where it went from the initial podcast episode to listening to a follow-up podcast, to reading about the project, checking them out on Twitter, and then thinking about the future of our own organization, and then finally making the decision of like, okay, fuck it, let's copy what they did.
Yeah, that reminds me of that old saying. I don't think I'm saying it properly, but it's something about, good luck is when preparation and opportunity come together. And it sounds like exactly what happened there. You had this idea bubbling in the back of your mind over some time, got to mess around with it, check it out, see it worked, resolve any doubts in your own mind, get that conviction level, and then, an opportunity comes up, called COVID, disaster for some, opportunity for others, and you have something that is ready to slot in. That is super cool. So tell me about your very first conversation when you're going to tell somebody that you're going to pay them in Bitcoin. And then the very first conversation when you tell a store owner to accept this Bitcoin. I want to hear how that went.
I mean, so my initial conversations, and even today, I talk to the coaches, and the coaches go out into the community and do the work on the ground. The reason I do it that way is because of the racial and cultural dynamics in South Africa. I don't want to make it look like I'm the person leading the project in the township. I'm fine to be the face of the project looking out to the rest of the world. I'm totally fine with that. But when it's on the ground in the township community, I want the coaches to be the leaders And so Lutando is the leader of the project in the township, and he's the one that's onboarded all the shops in the township. But I do know how the conversations went, because I talk to him on an almost daily basis. My first conversation with him was basically like, look, I know that you have actually I was forced to talk to Lutando about Bitcoin because he almost got pulled into a Bitcoin scam. And so I knew that there was a person who had this conversation with him, and I approached them afterwards and I said, look, man, like the thing that this guy was talking about, Bitcoin, like there is this thing, but it's not what he was saying. Like this guy was trying to use the name to scam you out of your money. So in other words, that put me in a position where I had to explain to him what Bitcoin was, because just saying that's not good enough. Because I knew if I didn't explain it to him properly, he's probably going to turn around and go right back to that guy, because everybody was desperate at that time. This was COVID. People were earning half the salaries they would normally earn. Everybody wanted to find a way to make extra money. And so I had to explain it to him properly. And so that was the first conversation. And then I think that helped a lot, because then when I pitched this idea of you want to earn your salary in Bitcoin, he already had a little bit of an understanding of what I was talking about. That was not the first thing I went to him with. The first thing I went to him with is, look, man, I need to explain something to you because you're about to walk into a dangerous situation. So I think that helped a lot to set the groundwork for what followed. And then the conversations with the shop owners, look, I mean, I think, what it comes down to is people will adopt anything you put in front of them if it solves an immediate problem. Like, if you have a real problem right in front of you and I come up to you with a solution, you're not going to have an opinion of that solution. Like, you're just going to go, does this thing solve my problem? Okay, fine, let's go. And that's kind of how it was with the shop owners. Like, you can do things with digital money that you can't do with paper money. Like, you can do online shopping. Like, one of the most amazing moments even today is to demonstrate to somebody who has never had access to digital money how to buy phone credit, or airtime as we call it here. How do you buy airtime from your phone? Like, that's like a magical thing if you've never had digital banking before. Like, if you've lived your entire life based on cash, you always had to walk down to the corner store with physical cash in your hand to go and buy your airtime. Now all of a sudden I can put money on your phone. You don't have to stand in a queue at a bank to open the account, and you can just buy your airtime right there. And that's the kind of thing that got the shop owners on board. So Lutando's conversation with them was all about that. Like, practical problems right here, right now. Let's solve that, and then you will want to use it no matter what.
Yeah, that is probably the key, I think, to the conversation around Bitcoin with anybody is you have. I mean, you mentioned earlier, you said, you've been obsessed with this technology ever since. And I haven't actually spoken to a single person who's looked into Bitcoin that isn't saying the same thing. Everybody's absolutely obsessed with it. And there's so many different directions you can go in. There's the technological side of it. There's the economic side. There's the philosophical side. And I remember it was something I think Robert Breedlove on his What is Money show mentioned once, that if you click on the first link on a Wikipedia page and just keep clicking through, eventually you end up on a page of philosophy. And it's kind of interesting. That's what you studied. And for me, the technological side of it is fine and the economic side of it is fine. But the philosophical side of it is actually the most important one in my experience. Is I have to understand what this thing does for me and why it does it. Does it solve this real problem? And I think that's where real world issues and philosophy are actually, they might seem like they're on opposite ends of the spectrum, but it's actually the same thing, because your philosophy kind of determines your worldview, or your worldview determines your philosophy, whichever way you want to look at it. And if you understand what it does for you, like the practicalities, as you've just said. I mean, I think a store owner, they're a business owner. You have your business, I have my business. When someone wants to come and tell you a long-winded story about some, thing, that's all fine and well. But if they can solve your problem, that's incredible. So I find it amazing that is what your, how Lutando has tackled it. Obviously he's a sales genius. Sales 101 is just give the customer what they need. Don't try and sell them something that you want to sell to them. So now, so he's had conversation with store owners. He's been getting paid in that. And how quickly did this idea sort of spread out or proliferate through your community?
It happened pretty slowly, but I mean, we kept it small for as long as necessary. It's grown a lot. So we have 10 people, 11 people that we now employ full time, and another 10 people that we employ part time, and all of them earn 100% of their salaries in Bitcoin. And this is just with the charity, with Bitcoin Ekasi and the Surfing Kids. On the business side of things, we still have the tour operator. There are several more people there that work and earn everything in Bitcoin too. We run about 70% of the business based on Bitcoin. But my wife runs the business for the most part because Ekasi keeps me busy full time. But it happened pretty slowly. It happened over a period of time. I mean, for the first year, it was Lutando, and then we got one other person. And then in the second year, we started growing quite a bit, but again, not too quickly. And I mean, today we're at a point where we have some numbers on the donation page, but I think it's like between 400 and I think it on if you go to support.bitcoinekasi.com, or if you click on the donate button on the website and you scroll down a bit, there's some numbers that the best estimates that we have for how many people are using Bitcoin in the township community on a daily basis. And I think the total number is around 500 people. So it's still not massive. Yeah, that's the one. Just scroll down a little bit and you'll see there's some numbers. A little bit more. Yeah, there we go. That one. A little bit up. Yeah. So so it's about 500 people. So on a daily basis, it gives you the number of people that are using Bitcoin on a daily basis, weekly basis, and then a monthly basis. And then there's like a brief description of what they are using it for. But yeah, all in all, that's about 500 people either using it daily, weekly, or monthly. But even if you just look at the top section, the orange section, that's over 100 people, 150 people using Bitcoin on a daily basis, which is still quite small, but that's fine. You want to be conservative when introducing this because it's a new technology. You're introducing it in an environment where people oftentimes don't read. People oftentimes don't understand large numbers. Just the idea that there's 100 million Satoshis in one Bitcoin. 90% of the people you go to in the township don't know how many zeros there are in a million, because you're dealing with a lack of education, which is not their fault. It's the fault of a completely corrupt government system that has failed its people and has failed to implement the policies that would actually uplift and empower people. But the reality on the ground is that you're dealing with people who, and Lutando says this himself, he says that one of his biggest challenges is explaining that to people. And he himself struggled with it for a long time. To understand these difficult theoretical concepts that you sometimes need to understand when you use Bitcoin. Not always, but if you just got a Blink wallet and you want to buy something from the local spaza shop, that's fine. But once you start saving in Bitcoin and thinking about the future, you do want to start understanding it on a deeper level, and that's pretty challenging. So Yeah, we keep it conservative. We're not going to onboard 150 new people tomorrow, because that means you have to educate 150 people for the next 6 months to a year. And that is a huge commitment. So you can't onboard 100 people per day, because you're going to overload yourself with the educational burden.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's how a network grows. It's not one person doing all the work. One person teaches one, that one teaches two, those two teach, 3 or 4, and you get this network effect. And that's why, I love what you were saying about people looking to save and people looking, to look after themselves. And I see you've got this interesting graph, which I've just pulled up now. Once again, also on your website, it's under the About tab. And it just talks about the loss in purchasing power in the South African rand. And you've got the two next to each other. The first one is a 98% drop down. And I think that was from the 70s to 94. And then from 94 onwards, you've got a 97% drop down. So is this a reality that people understand? Is this something you talk to the community about? Or obviously Lutanda would talk to them about? Like the real world connect between my rands are buying less than they used to buy last year or the year before. Is that a message that the guys are understanding, or they're feeling it and not really knowing why?
It's a message that they don't always understand cognitively. So like, they know that things get more expensive every year, but I mean, I've had conversations with highly intelligent people who also struggle to understand why money depreciates over time. It's that old story of, when you're a fish swimming in the water, you don't know what the water is, because it's all you know. So yeah, I think, I mean, they definitely begin to understand it once they start saving in Bitcoin, because then it just becomes so obvious. But when you show someone this graph, it's almost too abstract to explain. Also, because you're talking about longer periods of time. Like I can remember over my lifetime. I mean, I was born in the mid 80s, so by the early 90s, I could start remembering things, and I remember a liter of petrol costing like 2 rand or 3 rand, whereas today it's more than 20 rand. I remember the first time I understood the concept of an exchange rate. A US dollar was 5 rand. Today it's 18 rand. So it's kind of shitty, but it's not like overnight shittiness. It's kind of a longer period decline. And so I think it's a little too slow, the decline, for most people to have an immediate understanding. Like it's not Turkey or Argentina or Venezuela or Zimbabwe. It's kind of too slow for people to really understand the problem, but they all face this problem because the South African rand has declined by a huge amount relative to most other currencies, especially the dollar, over the last sort of generation. So it's not an immediate obvious understanding, if I could put it that way. But the coaches like Lutando, who's been saving in Bitcoin, he's been stacking sats for 3 years. And the first shop owner that he onboarded, she's also been stacking sats for 3 years. They definitely understand it. And that's great,
So I think my final question to you is, what do you say to people that, the poor people can't save, or people from low income areas can't save? There's no ability to save. It might be sounding a bit like the criticisms of the Bitcoin beach. Maybe I'm taking you back to that first podcast you heard talking about that. What do you say to that?
Well, I mean, I don't need to say anything to it, because we have real world examples of people who disprove that idea. Like, one of the things that we do is you'll see on the website there's pictures all over the place of painted shacks. So we've painted shacks with all kinds of different logos. If you go to that's one of them, for example. So there's 36 shacks in the township logos like that we painted on them. And we do that for a couple of different reasons. But one of the reasons we do that is because, what you want to do when you build a circular Bitcoin economy is you want to look for ways to get Satoshis into the hands of people so that they can spend it. But you want to find a responsible way to distribute those sats. You don't just want to go out and throw them around. Like, you don't want to come in there like a glitchy cash machine that's just spitting out money. So that's why it's great to find, like, paying salaries in Bitcoin. That's a great way to do it. But this is another way to do it. So we for example, we'll go to someone's shack and we'll say, look, we'll paint your shack. It'll make the shack look nice. So, we give you a nice paint job. It looks better than what it used to look. We get something out of it because we can put whatever logo we want to on there. Normally we put the logo of another project or another company or something that we know is going to attract attention when we post it on social media. So it creates that marketing effect for our project. It draws a lot of attention to what we do. But then at the same time, we can say to the person who lives in the shack, look, we'll pay you for this. Like, this is kind of like marketing for us. So we'll pay you for this. Provided that you look after the painting, it doesn't get vandalized or anything, and that you clean up the area around your shack. So you got to get rid of the pollution. You got to pick up the plastic rubbish. You got to make sure that the place doesn't look like real crap. It's got to be as clean as possible. And if you do that, we'll pay you in sats. So we've been doing this for 3 years, 2.5, 3 years, and there's one particular individual. There's more than one, but there's one in particular. This guy lives in a shack. He does have a job, so he is employed, but it's a minimum wage job. He earns 250 rand a day. So what's that in dollars? $10.
Yeah, probably like $12 maybe.
$12. Yeah, thereabout. So let's say he earns $15 a day. Between $10 and $15 a day. That's basically minimum wage in South Africa. This guy has been saving all the sats that we've been paying on a weekly basis, and so we pay 6,000 sats a week. So when we first started, that was like 60, a little bit less than that. Maybe 30, 40 rand, and it's gone above 100 rand now. But we denominate it in sats because we want people to grasp this idea of one of these currency units are going down in value, another one is going up. And the way you do that is by denominating the payment in sats, not in rands. And most of them spend their sats, but this particular guy has been stacking sats for 3 years. And man, last time I checked in on this guy, he's sitting on a solid stack, eh? And like that's someone who is living in impoverished conditions, who earns minimum wage, and there's an example of somebody that's saved, and he has saved enough Bitcoin that he's probably changed his future. Like, and that's not an exaggeration to say that he has saved an equivalent amount of money that if I think about where he's going to be in 10 years from now, like his life is going to look, provided that he keeps making the right decisions. Like if he sells that Bitcoin in the next bull run, yeah, okay. But if he hangs on to it and he never sells all of it, his life is going to be meaningfully different. Just because he saved 100 rands. I mean, you could say he saved $10 a week. Saving $10 a week has changed this person's life. And so I don't really have to say anything. I just point to examples like that. And that's just one example, but it's one example that there's no reason why that can't be replicated. It's just a matter of choice, really.
Yeah. No, that's incredible. Hermann, that's like such an amazing story. Thanks for sharing that. We are pretty much up on time at the moment. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about quickly that we haven't really covered?
No, I mean, I think that's pretty much it. I think I would just, the ongoing debate, and this is something that I'm kind of getting ready to discuss when I go to the US at the end of next week for the big Bitcoin conference, is like this idea that we can just hodl and hodl and hodl until Bitcoin has fully monetized itself, it's just total rubbish. Like, you have to spend this thing, man. And it's like, I love discussing this topic because it gets people worked up so much, but it's so simple. It's so basic. It's like, dude, there is no opportunity cost attached to buying a coffee with Bitcoin. Like, come on, man. Just go out there, spend the sats, buy a coffee, create more demand for this money. And that's how you fuel the circular economy. And that's how you drive adoption. There's vast areas of the world where you're never going to drive adoption simply by hodling, but where you can drive adoption through responsible spending. And you don't do that in a way which takes away from the saving culture. You do that in a way that actually encourages the saving culture. So it's kind of like a false debate, It's like, just get over this mentality that everyone must just hodl forever. Like, there is already now a place for spending Bitcoin that really helps the mission, 100%.
Yeah, no, that's well said there. I agree with you 100%. The whole sort of commodity theory of money, which I think is, a very Austrian economic way of viewing money. It makes complete sense to me that when people were discovering what is something that is valuable to somebody else, it was discovered by what is somebody else prepared to accept. And when you are passing this thing around and it's being passed around and everyone is starting to converge, hey, man, give me more of that stuff because I know a lot of other people that will accept it, is passing this money around. And the more people that accept it and pass it on, it kind of builds, people are then prepared to say, I'll save some of the stuff because I know plenty of people now that will accept it. And
exactly.
That comes to that store of value versus medium of exchange. And I don't know if there's a fine line between, if there's a big difference between the two. I think the line is very fine and it's overlapped in many cases. And it's just one of those things. And I agree with what you're saying. Get the stuff moving out there, get people accepting it, because when people accept it, you have a bigger market. When you have a bigger market, it becomes something that more people will be prepared to save. It's sort of self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, 100%, dude. I mean, I'm only one half of this operation. My wife is the other half, and I had to convince my wife to hold on to Bitcoin. And it wouldn't have been, it never would have happened if that first transaction and we used Bitcoin as a medium of exchange there in 2015 to receive value and transfer it over here. And it was the medium of exchange aspect that got her on board. And she looked at that. She was like, okay, this thing is going to have value one day, because look how easily I could transfer value from one side of the planet to the other. It was because we could use it as a medium of exchange that she was happy to get on board with me. I understood a little bit more about the technology and the scarcity and why it would probably pick up value because people are going to hodl and hoard this thing. But she got on board really because of the ease with which we could use it as a medium of exchange to transfer value from one side of the planet to the other, because she was the one dealing with the clients and getting the clients and getting them to pay. So it's totally true that you onboard people onto the savings technology by showing them how easy it is to spend and how many people are actually willing to take this.
Yeah, I think that is. I couldn't have said it better. You obviously are speaking from experience, and that comes through in what you're saying. Hermann, how do people get hold of you? How do they follow you and your projects? How do they just keep in touch with what you're doing?
I mean, on that website, we have a contact form. If you want to get in touch via email, that's the best way to do it. And other than that, we have a profile on Twitter, where sometimes I do get around to checking DMs, but for the most part, it's a mess. It's just so much spam and bots there that the better way to do it is through the website email form. And I also enjoy Nostr, so I post on Nostr, and I often am on there. So yeah, either one of those ways, that's the best way.
Fantastic. Hermann, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for giving up this hour of your day. Good luck with your presentation, and I look forward to watching that. I will be back in South Africa by the time you are in the US, so I'll watch it online. But have a good one. And
Thank
well
you,
done with all the work you're doing. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Cheers, Bye.
Thanks. Cheers.